Hello, my name is Steve Carlton. I am a senior instructor through Designix Technologies, and I'm here to give you some real quick tips on rotating objects when you're placing them in a project within Revit. Before I talk about the rotation piece, I want to explain how the rotation works when it comes to going through and rotating around a specific point. That point is called your insertion point. And insertion points are actually defined in the family itself. So, as most people know, when you go through and you use Revit, families are the heart of this program. You basically have all these families that you're going to insert into your project to place them and design whatever it is that you're designing. But when they go through and define that family itself, part of what they're defining about that family is the insertion points. And a lot of that is based off of the actual reference planes that are used within the family itself. So let me explain this to you, so hopefully it's not too confusing. I'm going to go over to the architecture tab and click on the component. And I'm going to just place a desk right here in this project. And you'll notice that that desk that I placed, if you notice, look at where my insertion point is. That's where my cursor is. You'll notice that it's attached to the bottom left-hand corner of this desk. And so, that's great if you want to go in and use that particular point as a point of reference when you're going through and inserting something. But sometimes you might find that that insertion point needs to be in a different spot. And unfortunately, this is one of these situations where it's not that it's really complicated to do, but unfortunately, it's one of these situations where you have to go into the family editor to change that insertion point. So let me just show you that real quick. If I come over and double click on this desk that I placed, you'll see that this is going to take me into the actual family editor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the ground floor view so that I can go through and make this adjustment. When you go into the family editor, you're going to find, for those of you folks that are new with Revit, you're going to find that these families that are created are based off of pre-configured templates that come with Revit. And a lot of times when you use these pre-configured templates, in this particular case, they used a furniture template to go through and create this desk. But you'll find that a lot of these reference planes, that's these dash lines that you see right here, these reference planes are already part of the actual template, and they're there for you to go through and define your object and make sure that everything is positioned the way that it's supposed to be positioned, so that when you actually go through and place that family into the project, that it displays it the way that it's supposed to be displayed. So these again are just reference planes to be used for going through and creating this actual family. And you'll see again that a lot of these reference planes are part of these templates, and then you always have the ability to go within and add your own reference planes. Now, with reference planes, the one thing that Revit does is it uses the intersection of two reference planes to define that insertion point. So if I were to take this particular reference plane right here in this particular, it's going horizontally along the bottom here, if I click on that, you're going to see that there's an option right here that says defines origin, and you'll see that that is checked. And you'll also notice that if I come over here and click on this reference plane that's going vertically right here, that this one is also checked. And so when you saw that I placed that desk and my insertion point was in the bottom left-hand corner, it's because it's taken the intersecting point between these two reference planes that have this option selected. Okay, so these options have to be selected, but it took the intersecting point between the two reference planes where this option was selected, and that's what my intersection point, or my insertion point, pardon me, that's where the insertion point is actually being based off of, is the intersecting point between those two. It's starting to sound like a riddle here. So what we have to do is, in order to go back and redefine that insertion point, we have to go back and reselect what reference planes that we want to use the intersecting point as for that insertion point. If I, say, for example, wanted my insertion point to be right here in the midpoint of this bottom portion of this desk right here, what I can do is I can come over here and click on this reference plane, and now you'll see right here where it says define origin, it's unchecked. So if I come over and I click on that to check that, and then I say, okay, where's that point going to be at? So I have to intersect with another reference plane here. I could go in and choose another reference plane, or I can simply come over here to the Create tab and I can create my own reference plane, okay? So just keep in mind again, and this is why I said that in the family editor, when you go to the family editor, that a lot of times there's reference planes that are already there for you to use, but that's not always the case. And there might be a very specific intersecting point that you want to use as your insertion point, and you may not have the reference planes there to be used for that. So you can go in and create your own. It's not a big deal. You just come over here and click on the reference plane button and you draw wherever you want that reference plane to be at. In this particular case, I already created another reference plane right here along the bottom. Now it's really difficult to see, but if you'll notice if I tab, right there, it's going to show me that that reference plane. And if I go in and just click on that, you'll see that now what I want to do is I want to come over here and click on defines origin right here too. So now what I've done is I've selected this reference plane, I've selected this reference plane, I checked this box right here that says defines origin, and because Revit's going to look for the intersecting point between those two reference planes, that's where my insertion point is going to be. So if I come back over here and click on load in the project, I'm going to take that change that I made and load that back into the Revit project, and it's going to ask me if I want to overwrite the existing version of the family that I have in there. Yes, I want to do that. So if I click on that button, that's going to redefine that insertion point. Now watch this. If I come back over here to the architecture tab and click on component again, now you'll see that my insertion point is actually in the middle of this desk as opposed to the corner where it was previously. So again, that plays a really important part because of this. When we get into the rotation part of this, you're going to see that when you go in and rotate something, it's going to rotate around that insertion point. And you'll notice that there's a message down here that says, click to place a free instance, and in parentheses it says space bar to rotate. And what that means is that when you press the space bar, it's actually going to rotate. And you'll notice that it is rotating around that insertion point that I defined. So again, depending on where you're trying to place this at and what else you've got going on in your project and what you're trying to rotate around or whatever, that insertion point is going to be very, very critical to helping you go through and line that up where you want it to be lined up to when you're actually going through and placing it. But the other thing to keep in mind is that rotating the object using the spacebar is probably the quickest and easiest way to go through and do this. Now, some objects do not allow you to go through and rotate while you're placing them. Sometimes for some situations you have to actually click to place an object, and then you can go in and press the space bar to go through and rotate it after you've already placed it. But the easiest way to go through and do this, as I've said, is to just go through and press that space bar before you've actually clicked to place it, and that will help you out. Now, a couple things real quick to keep in mind with this is that number one, you'll notice that it is going through and doing 90-degree increments when you go through and do this rotation. If you want to change that, you can go in and highlight a intersection point like I have right here, and then go through and do the space bar, and you'll notice that it will change over to 45-degree increments. And then here's the really cool tip that you have with rotating when it comes to dealing with objects that are curved. So for example, in this particular case, we have a curved wall right here, and there's a lot of situations these days with architectural design and stuff where you have to place something in reference or at the same angle as something else that already has a curve that's going on to it. And sometimes that can be a little crazy to go through and do. Now, I'm going to show you a couple different ways of going through and doing this, particularly when it comes to the rotation after you place something. So let me just show you a couple ways that some people choose to do this. If they go through and just click to place the object wherever they want it, sometimes what they'll do is they'll come in and select that object after the fact, and then come over and click on the rotate button up here under the modify panel, and then go through and choose to rotate the object that way after they've already placed it. So that's one technique that you could go through and do in terms of rotating it after you've already placed it. Okay. Something else that people will do is when they come over and actually click to place that, you'll notice that right here there's this option up here in your options bar that says rotate after placement. And what that means is that it kind of kicks you up into this mode that this option that we just did previously, but it does it right away after you've gone through and placed it. So if you check that and then you go in and click to place it, you'll see that now it's automatically allowing you to go through and rotate an object after you've gone through and placed it. So again, those are two techniques that are used when you go through and place an object to rotate it after you've gone through and placed it wherever you want it to be placed at. Now, here's an easier way of going through and doing this, and this is just the method that I would always recommend. It's kind of one of these hidden tricks that a lot of people don't realize that you could do this, and that is that if you go in and take the whole concept that I've been talking about with pressing the spacebar. Whoops, I meant to go over here and click on component. But if you actually take this concept of placing a component using the spacebar, but combine it with the fact that if you come over here and hover your cursor over the curved line, so that's the key thing right there, okay? Hover your cursor over that curved line and then press your spacebar. Notice what's going on there. See how it's changing the angle? It's basically changing the direction or the angle or the rotation of your object based off of the angle of that wall. And that right there in itself is a really time-saving feature that you can use when it comes to placing objects that have to be at an odd angle that might be something other than a 45 or 90 degree angle that I was showing you earlier. It's got to actually follow the actual direction or be in reference to the actual angle of the curved wall. And so I've seen this happen a lot with some people where they go in and they place things and then they try to go in and try to match this object up to that curved object, whatever it is that they have, and they just spend a lot of time with that. And if you just simply, again, put your cursor over the wall or the curved object and then press your spacebar, it will then follow the direction of that curved object that you have, saving you a tremendous amount of time when it comes to going through and placing that object. Okay, thanks for watching the video on rotating objects. I hope you found some of these tips to be useful. And if you're interested in any more involved Revit training, you can go to our website at www.designx.com and check out some of the Revit courses that we have to offer there. We offer these classes in a variety of formats. Our more popular one is the online instructor-led courses. These are very personalized classes where an instructor will work with you specifically on the course that you have signed up with and go at your pace. So they're very helpful and beneficial for anybody that needs that one-on-one training. Also, we do live training events here in Myrtle Beach quarterly, and then also if you have a group of individuals that need trained, we will come to your facility and do a on-site group training. So you can use the contact information at the top of the website to fill out the information request form. To get a hold of us, you can contact us at 844-295-5510, or you can email us at info@designx.com. Again, my name is Steve Carlton, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.